Have you ever wondered what it takes to outsmart one of the most secure digital banks in the world? Imagine sitting behind a screen filled with endless lines of code, your fingers dancing across the keyboard as you navigate unseen pathways through firewalls designed to be impenetrable. What if I told you that a brilliant young hacker actually pulled this off, building an elaborate system so sophisticated and untraceable that millions could be siphoned away without a single alarm sounding? The idea sounds like the plot of a high-stakes thriller, but this was real life, calculated, precise, and cloaked in shadows where every digital footprint vanished as quickly as it appeared. Picture the calm confidence of someone who believes they have conquered the impossible, masking each access behind layers of virtual identities, erasing every trace meticulously. Every move was planned, every moment measured to avoid detection. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. What if the entire operation, this flawless cyber heist, was undone by the smallest oversight? A single automated log file quietly tucked away on a secondary server, recording something the hacker never thought to check, the exact IP address of his own machine. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The idea that such a monumental plan could unravel not because of a coding error or a careless password, but because of one tiny detail overlooked. You might be thinking, how could someone so brilliant miss something so basic? That's exactly what makes this story both fascinating and cautionary. Have you ever felt invincible, only to realize later that the smallest slip can turn everything upside down? Fika Kamigo 80 Final, because what you're about to discover will challenge everything you think you know about digital security and the illusion of invisibility online. This isn't just a tale of hacking. It's a lesson in humility, precision, and the fragility of even the most sophisticated schemes. As the calm behind those screens gave way to the sudden, violent crash of a battering ram breaking down a door, the hacker's world shifted in an instant. What happened next reveals why the greatest mistake wasn't in the brilliance of the code written, but in the belief that deleting every trace was truly possible. Stay with me, because the story is far from over, and the threads of this unraveling are about to pull us deeper into a game of shadows, secrets, and unexpected consequences. If the story resonates with you, if the tension and the stakes of this digital cat-and-mouse game spark something inside, I'd love to hear what struck you the most, what made you pause, or maybe even question your own assumptions about privacy and control in our connected world. Leaving a comment isn't just about sharing your thoughts. It's about building a space where our experiences and reflections can intertwine, helping all of us see this story through new eyes. Your voice adds weight to the conversation, turning this channel into a community rather than just a one-way narrative. And if you find yourself drawn into this unfolding mystery, if you want to keep uncovering what lies beneath those fractured codes and hidden agendas, clicking that like button isn't just a simple gesture. It's a way of saying, yes, I want more of this. It helps the story reach others who might need to hear it, sparking conversations that extend far beyond these digital walls. Every like breathes life into this project, propelling it forward so we can dive even deeper into the twists yet to come. Finally, if you want to stay alongside as the shadows lengthen and the secrets multiply, subscribing is the best way to make sure you won't miss a moment. It's not just about notifications. It's about committing to this journey together, growing a community that watches, questions, and learns as one. Because the truth we're chasing here isn't just a solitary pursuit. It's a shared quest, and your presence makes all the difference. So, if you're ready, keep those thoughts coming in the comments, hit like if the story moves you, and subscribe to walk this path with us. The next chapter is just around the corner, and trust me, what happens next will challenge everything you thought you knew. The fintech at the center of this unfolding mystery was no ordinary institution. It was a fortress of zeros and ones, a multi-million-dollar enterprise whose value wasn't measured in brick and mortar but in lines of code and the intangible trust of millions. From the outside, it looked like any sleek, modern startup with glossy interfaces and promises of seamless transactions. Inside, however, it was a labyrinth of encryption protocols layered so deeply that even the most seasoned cybersecurity experts regarded it as impenetrable. Every byte of information was cloaked behind AI-driven fraud detection systems that adapted in real time, learning from each attempted breach to close off potential vulnerabilities before they could be exploited. The company's reputation was built on one simple phrase, repeated by executives and analysts alike. Unhackable. That label wasn't just marketing jargon. It was a challenge cast into the digital void, a gauntlet thrown at anyone tempted to test their skills against what was believed to be an invincible monolith. To many, the idea of breaking into such a system was akin to cracking a safe protected by thousands of layers of steel and electronic watchdogs, where every move was anticipated and countered by artificial intelligence designed to neutralize threats with surgical precision. The engineers behind the fintech had poured resources into creating a near-perfect ecosystem, where the battlefield was invisible, and the currency was not cash but encrypted data secured in a realm where physical laws no longer applied. For the hacker, the allure wasn't just the financial gain but the intellectual conquest. Institutions that boasted invulnerability were the ultimate puzzles, their defenses a complex dance of firewalls, machine learning algorithms, and biometric safeguards. To breach such a system was to rewrite the rules of engagement in the digital age. It was about exposing the illusion of security that these tech giants projected to the world. The hackers' fascination stemmed from the belief that systems proclaiming themselves untouchable attracted complacency, a blind spot in their armor born from arrogance and overconfidence. The challenge was not merely to access the data but to do so without triggering alarms, to slip through cracks invisible to human eyes and AI sentinels alike. In this world, the traditional concept of vaults and safes had dissolved. Money no longer sat behind reinforced steel doors. It existed as complex algorithms, scattered across servers and cloud infrastructures distributed globally. The battlefield was intangible, a shifting landscape of code and protocols. The hackers' weapons were lines of code, exploits, and a deep understanding of the underlying architecture that governed digital assets. Defenders relied on predictive analytics and behavioral anomalies to detect intrusion attempts, but the attacker sought to blend in, to mimic legitimate traffic and evade detection by exploiting the very systems designed to prevent unauthorized access. This digital domain was rife with tension and uncertainty, where seconds could decide the outcome of a breach attempt. Each move had to be calculated with precision, every step masking intent beneath layers of obfuscation. The hacker operated in shadows, navigating corridors of data flowing invisibly beneath the surface of everyday transactions. The fintech, for all its confidence and sophistication, had never faced an adversary quite like this. Someone who understood not only the technical defenses, but also the psychology behind the institution's claims of invincibility. Amid the silent hum of servers and blinking lights in data centers scattered across continents, the unseen war raged. It was a conflict without gunfire or physical confrontation, fought instead with keystrokes and algorithms, where identities were masked behind proxy servers, and every trace left behind was a clue waiting to be uncovered. The hackers' fascination with this unhackable fortress wasn't just a whim. It was an obsession rooted in the paradox of security itself, how systems built to protect sometimes create their own vulnerabilities through the very confidence they project. As the digital heist took shape in the unseen depths of this encrypted world, the question wasn't just if the hacker could break through, but how far they were willing to go to dismantle the myth of invulnerability. The stakes were no longer just financial. They touched on trust, reputation, and the fragile balance that kept the modern financial system ticking. In a reality where money was stored in code, the battlefield remained invisible, but the consequences of every breach would echo loudly through the corridors of power and influence, setting the stage for a confrontation that would redefine what it meant to be secure in the digital era. At 23, the hacker carried the weight of countless sleepless nights etched into the pale shadows beneath his eyes. His world was a labyrinth of code, a virtual fortress he had begun constructing at 12, armed only with curiosity and an insatiable hunger for knowledge. Without formal instruction, he taught himself to navigate the sprawling forums where other programmers battled with puzzles and challenges, capture the flag competitions, cryptic algorithms, exploits buried deep within software. Each victory was a brick in the fortress of his self-assurance, a testament to his growing dominance over systems designed by others. Yet, this brilliance was not untarnished. Beneath the surface of his exceptional intellect hid a flaw as sharp as any vulnerability he sought to exploit, an ego cloaked as genius. He saw the world through a lens of superiority, convinced that the architects of the systems he breached were not merely fallible but fundamentally inferior. Their errors were not accidental. They were proof of their weakness, a glaring testament to his own unmatched prowess. To him, hacking transcended mere intrusion. It was an assertion of dominance, a demonstration that in any room, virtual or physical, he was the smartest mind present. This belief shaped his every move. When he dissected firewalls or bypassed encryption, it was not just a technical exercise but a psychological victory. The systems failed not because they were inherently flawed, but because their creators lacked the insight he possessed. This mindset gave him a dangerous edge but also sowed the seeds of downfall. Overconfidence made him reckless, blind to the subtle traps that even the most advanced security could set for an adversary who underestimated the complexity beyond the code. His isolation fed into this. Social interactions were sparse. Awkward moments he avoided or navigated with the detachment of someone who found more comfort in lines of code than in human conversation. This introversion was both a shield and a prison, allowing him to retreat into a world where logic reigned supreme but cutting him off from perspectives that might have tempered his hubris. The forums and chat rooms where he spent his nights were arenas where anonymity allowed him to construct an identity unburdened by real-world limitations. Yet the lack of genuine connection only deepened the divide between the hacker and those who might challenge his worldview. His tools were as custom as his approach. Scripts and programs crafted with painstaking precision, each designed to probe weaknesses invisible to casual observers. He reveled in the complexity, in the dance of packets and protocols, but the thrill was always underpinned by the certainty that no one could outthink him. This certainty, however, was a double-edged sword. It shaped his tactics but blinded him to the evolving landscape where defenders adapted rapidly, where the lines between attacker and protector blurred in unexpected ways. The city outside his window was a different kind of puzzle, its network of streets, alleys, and neon-lit facades reflecting the same intricate patterns he chased in cyberspace. Yet, unlike the digital realm, the urban sprawl was unpredictable, chaotic, and alive with variables beyond code. Here, his intellect faced challenges that algorithms could not anticipate, and the sterile confidence of his hacking dominance faltered against the messy realities of human behavior and societal structures. In this tension between brilliance and blind spot, the hacker moved forward, driven by a conviction that his mind was the ultimate weapon. But the very flaw that fueled his ascent, his ego masquerading as genius, would soon confront a force that did not adhere to his rules, a presence in the shadows waiting for the moment when pride would become vulnerability. The stage was set, not just for a battle of skills, but for a collision between calculated arrogance and the unpredictable pulse of the world outside his screens. The faintest hesitation in the system's heartbeat had been enough. A single millisecond, so slight it could have been dismissed as network lag or a flicker in the server's processing. Yet, to him, it was a beacon. He had been probing the bank's digital fortress, skimming the surface of its defenses, when that subtle delay in the authentication response caught his attention. It wasn't just a random glitch. It was an anomaly buried beneath layers of code, a whisper of imperfection in an otherwise impenetrable wall. He returned to that point, methodical now, peeling back the digital strata like an archaeologist uncovering an ancient relic. Each line of legacy code was a relic of past architecture, a forgotten footprint from a time when security standards had been less rigorous and oversight even less stringent. Old systems rarely died. They lingered, sometimes forgotten, sometimes ignored, and this endpoint was one of those ghosts, a hidden gate that no one at the bank knew was still operational. The code was tangled, obscured by patches and quick fixes. It was a labyrinth, but this flaw was a thread he could pull. He traced the endpoint through a web of outdated protocols and deprecated functions, a shadow buried beneath the gleaming facade of modern encryption. The very existence of this vulnerability suggested neglect, a crack in the armor, a tiny fault line in a structure presumed unbreakable. As he reconstructed the pathway, a smirk crept across his face. Here was a secret passage behind the vault, a backdoor veiled by years of oversight. The bank's cybersecurity team, confident in their firewalls and intrusion detection systems, had no idea this endpoint was not only alive but accessible. It was a blind spot, a weakness masquerading as obsolescence. And it was his to exploit. He prepared his tools carefully, crafting a series of requests designed to test the endpoint's resilience. Each probe was a calculated risk. One wrong move could trigger alarms or lock him out entirely. But confidence coursed through his veins. He was no longer just a visitor at the gates. He was becoming a specter within the system, slipping through cracks no one else had noticed. The endpoint responded, slow but steady, revealing fragments of data that hinted at deeper access. It was like discovering a hidden room behind a false wall, a secret chamber filled with the bank's most guarded secrets. The old code was his key, the forgotten route his advantage. He mapped the network's internal structure, noting how information flowed through this hidden channel, bypassing the usual safeguards. His mind raced with possibilities. This was more than just an entry point, it was a lever, a means to manipulate the system from within quietly and invisibly. The realization settled over him with a cold clarity. The bank's defenses were vast and complex, but they were not infallible. Somewhere in the tangle of digital infrastructure, a single flaw could be the difference between failure and mastery.
No alarm sounded. No unexpected barriers emerged.
The system, so confident in its own design, treated this forgotten endpoint as nothing more than a relic. But he saw it for what it was, a vulnerability waiting to be transformed into power. "They'll never see me coming," he whispered, the words barely audible over the hum of his equipment. The phrase was not boastful. It was a statement of fact. In this game of shadows and code, invisibility was the ultimate weapon. He leaned back for a moment, eyes flickering over the streams of data as they flowed through the compromised endpoint. Each packet was a thread in the web he was weaving, each response a confirmation of his control. The city outside carried on unaware, its pulse steady and indifferent to the digital war unfolding in its veins. But beneath the surface, something was shifting. The balance between hunter and hunted, between control and chaos, was tilting ever so slightly. The flaw he had uncovered was a breach not just in the bank's security, but in the illusion of control itself. In the silence of his dimly lit room, surrounded by monitors and blinking lights, he prepared to push further. The endpoint was the first step, a foothold in a territory once thought unreachable. What came next would require precision and patience, a careful dance between exposure and concealment. And somewhere beyond the glow of the screens, unseen eyes might already be turning toward the anomaly, a flicker in the system that did not belong. The digital labyrinth he wove was anything but simple. Each virtual machine was a ghost in the network, an ephemeral echo that vanished the moment it had served its purpose. These machines didn't just run sequentially, they were chained, a carefully orchestrated relay passing the signal through layers of encryption and obfuscation. He wasn't merely creating a backdoor. He was constructing a maze so complex that any attempt to trace it would lead to dead ends and loops, a hall of mirrors reflecting only false leads. VPNs stretched across continents, bouncing his presence from one jurisdiction to another. The data packets traveled through tunnels in countries with no extradition agreements, jurisdictions known more for their shadows than their laws. Each connection was a thread in a sprawling web, and one wrong move could unravel months of careful preparation. The network of VPN nodes was a digital camouflage, designed to make his activity indistinguishable from legitimate traffic. It was a map of places he had never been, cities he had no passport for, signals bouncing invisibly through cables that crossed oceans and borders. Within the bank's internal systems, he planted fake admin accounts that mimicked the credentials of employees long gone. These accounts carried histories, login timestamps, access patterns, even system modifications that looked authentic to anyone scanning logs. The meticulous detail was such that even a seasoned security analyst would hesitate before flagging them. These phantom identities moved through the system like ghosts, their footprints indistinct, their actions blending seamlessly with routine maintenance and authorized interventions. Yet the most sophisticated element was the shadow tunnel piggybacking on legitimate bank traffic. It was a hidden corridor carved alongside the usual data flows, a parallel stream that carried his commands and exfiltrated information without raising alarms. This tunnel wasn't just stealthy, it was symbiotic. It absorbed the noise of the bank's normal operations, making it impossible to distinguish between genuine requests and malicious activity. To any monitoring system, His presence was a faint pulse embedded in the heartbeat of the institution. He didn't just hide inside the system, he became part of it. His code was woven into the very fabric of the bank's digital infrastructure, camouflaged within layers of encryption and protocol that masked its true nature. Every command issued, every byte transferred, was cloaked in the bank's own digital language. The system's own complexity became his shield, and its routine patterns became his cover. Throughout the process, he documented every step with precision. Logs, notes, timestamps, everything was recorded in encrypted files stored in isolated locations within the virtual environment. He maintained control over every variable, confident that no unexpected event could compromise his operation. Each measure was a calculated move in an intricate game of stealth and control, designed to anticipate and neutralize any trace that might lead back to him. His certainty was born from a cold logic, the assumption that he had left no traceable log anywhere. No breadcrumbs, no signatures, no telltale markers in the vast digital wilderness he traversed. The system's own monitoring tools became unwitting allies, swallowing his presence into their endless streams of data. In this digital cat-and-mouse game, he was crafting an illusion of absence, the perfect ghost in the machine. But even the most sophisticated designs have their vulnerabilities. A single overlooked anomaly, a brief flicker in the network's rhythm, could unravel the entire construct. Somewhere within the bank's sprawling infrastructure, something might yet detect the faint irregularity. Whether it was an automated alert, a curious analyst, or an AI system trained to spot the unnatural, the risk lurked beneath the surface of his careful engineering. As the hours stretched on, he monitored the system's responses, watching for any sign of disruption or exposure. The silence of the network was both a reassurance and a warning, a quiet before a storm that might come without warning. He knew that the true test was still ahead, not in building the ghost, but in moving it through the system undetected, extracting what he needed without leaving a trace. Across the city, in offices filled with fluorescent lights and the soft hum of servers, unseen eyes scanned logs and charts, searching for patterns that didn't belong. Somewhere in this vast tangle of data and code, a subtle tension was building, a slow tightening of the net that would challenge the invisibility he had crafted with such care. If you've ever wondered how a shadow can stretch through walls and circuits alike, this silent war beneath the surface of the digital city reveals just how fragile the balance between control and chaos can be. Feel free to share your thoughts below. What do you think happens when a ghost tries to become part of the system itself? The screen flickered as the code cascaded down in endless lines, a digital waterfall of cryptic commands and encrypted sequences. His fingers danced over the keyboard with a precision born not just of skill but of obsession. Each keystroke a calculated move in a game where the stakes were immeasurable. The firewall, a digital fortress designed to repel intruders, began to crumble under the weight of his relentless assault. Algorithms meant to safeguard the system twisted and contorted, fooled into submission by his crafted exploits. The network's pulse quickened, but no alarms sounded, no sirens blared, no blinking red lights demanded attention. Everything hummed along as if nothing were amiss. He initiated the transfer. Millions moved like whispers in the night, broken into countless tiny fragments, each amount insignificant on its own but colossal when combined. These microtransactions spilled across a web of accounts scattered in distant countries, slipping through jurisdictional cracks and regulatory blind spots. The dispersed nature of the funds ensured that no single ledger would raise suspicion. It was a ghostly siphoning, a silent exfiltration masked as nothing more than background noise in the digital ether. Leaning back, he allowed himself a moment to register the gravity of what he had just done. In that instant, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the cooling fans and the occasional distant siren from the city outside. The glow of the monitor painted his face in pale blues and greens, highlighting the tight set of his jaw and the sharp focus in his eyes. He was convinced this was flawless, that the system itself had been outmaneuvered so completely that no trace would remain. This conviction, however, was more than confidence. It was arrogance in its purest form. The nature of the digital underworld was one of constant vigilance, and complacency was a luxury few could afford. Yet here he was, convinced that the perfect heist had been executed without a single misstep. The magnitude of his act stretched beyond mere theft. It was a demonstration of control, a challenge issued to every invisible watcher embedded deep within the financial networks. But even the most sophisticated systems had their shadows, blind spots where the unexpected could fester. As the minutes stretched into an hour, the absence of alerts began to feel less like reassurance and more like an eerie silence before a storm. Somewhere in the labyrinth of servers and security protocols, layers of defense were designed to detect the minutest irregularity, but the subtlety of his approach had blurred the lines between legitimate and illicit activity. It was a delicate balance, a near-impossible tightrope walk where one false move could unravel everything. Across town, in a room cluttered with monitors displaying streams of data and surveillance feeds, a different kind of observer stirred. The analysts were trained to detect anomalies, to read between the lines of code and see what the system's designers could not anticipate. The pattern of microtransactions, the obscured pathways of digital currency, these were the signatures that whispered of something amiss. Yet even they hesitated, caught in the ambiguity of whether this was a glitch or something far more sinister. Back at the scene of the crime, the hacker's mind raced ahead, already plotting contingencies and cover stories. The psychological tension was palpable. Every success carried the burden of potential exposure. A dance with shadows, where the line between hunter and hunted blurred with every passing second. The city outside, oblivious to the silent war raging in its veins, pulsed with life and noise, but beneath its surface, an invisible battle was unfolding. A battle where the true power lay not in brute force but in deception, subtlety, and the ability to disappear without a trace. In that moment, the hacker understood that the digital realm was as much a psychological battlefield as it was a technological one. The true challenge was not just breaking in but staying unseen, manipulating perception and reality until they became indistinguishable. The execution of the plan was only the beginning, a single move in a much larger game where every participant was both predator and prey, concealed behind screens and firewalls. The question now was how long this illusion could hold before the cracks began to appear, before the faintest flicker of an anomaly triggered a cascade of investigations, suspicion, and relentless pursuit. The city's quiet tension seemed to thicken, as if the digital shadows themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the next act to unfold. Feel free to leave your thoughts below. What do you think it takes to vanish completely in a world where every move is tracked, logged, and analyzed? What the hacker had failed to realize was that the bank's network architecture included more layers than he could have anticipated. Buried deep in the labyrinth of servers and data streams was a secondary system, designed not for frontline security but for raw data redundancy, a diagnostic server meant to mirror critical logs in real time. Its existence was a secret to most, known only to a handful of system architects and engineers. It was not linked to the primary security protocols and therefore was overlooked by anyone attempting to breach the system in the usual way. The hackers' tools, sophisticated as they were, never scanned for that particular node. It was an uncharted island in his digital map, a blind spot in his otherwise thorough reconnaissance. This diagnostic server kept automatic access logs written in a format that was simple yet immutable. The logs were stored in a read-only environment, inaccessible for external modification or deletion. Every action within the bank's network, every file accessed, every protocol initiated, was recorded with precise timestamps, entry paths, and crucially, the originating IP addresses. Unlike the main security logs, these records were not encrypted or hidden behind layers of obfuscation. Their strength lay in their permanence and transparency. A single line of text in these logs could unravel the entire illusion the hacker had crafted. When the security team finally stumbled upon this file, it became the thread that, once pulled, began to unravel the whole tapestry of deception. There, embedded quietly among thousands of other entries, was one timestamp that coincided exactly with the moment the breach began. The entry path showed the method used to infiltrate, and the IP address, an unmistakable digital footprint, pointed directly back to the hacker's point of origin. This was the one line he never thought anyone would see, the one breadcrumb he had left behind in his maze of digital disguise. The realization was a shock. The hacker had operated with the assumption that erasing his tracks from the primary servers was enough. He had believed that by manipulating the security logs, by rerouting data flows and planting false trails, he could erase any trace of his intrusion. But the diagnostic server was a silent witness, an unalterable observer that recorded everything with clinical precision. It was a fail-safe, a forgotten piece of architecture meant to ensure system integrity, ironically now serving as the bank's strongest weapon against the intruder. As the investigators traced the IP address, the city's digital underbelly began to unravel. The location was tied to a network of proxy servers, but the chain of redirections was incomplete. Somewhere along the path, the hacker had slipped up, left a tiny gap in the mask of anonymity. That gap was now the focal point of the investigation. Analysts began to cross-reference access times with network traffic patterns, correlating data from other sources to piece together the hacker's movements. Each layer peeled back revealed fragments of the true path the intruder had taken. The tension within the team grew. The diagnostic logs provided a new avenue of pursuit, a direct line to follow instead of the dead ends scattered throughout the primary system. What had seemed an impenetrable fortress was now vulnerable through this hidden channel. The city's quiet tension, once suspended in a fragile balance, shifted into something more kinetic, an unfolding chase through electronic corridors where every keystroke mattered. Meanwhile, the hacker found himself in unfamiliar territory. His usual tools and methods felt suddenly inadequate. The discovery of this unaltered log was a reminder that, despite layers of encryption and obfuscation, no system was truly impervious. The digital landscape was full of overlooked crevices where the slightest misstep could become the undoing. He had underestimated the complexity of the bank's defenses and the persistence of those guarding them. The diagnostic server's log file, a seemingly mundane record, had become the key to unmasking him. Each entry was a time-stamped confession, a silent testimony to the paths taken and the attempts made. It was not a flashy piece of code or an advanced firewall that caught him, but a simple, unchangeable line of text, a trace left behind like a shadow in the night. The deeper implications of this became clear as investigators dug further, revealing more about the hacker's methods and the network's hidden architecture. This revelation forced a reevaluation of the entire breach. It was no longer just a story of intrusion and evasion, but one of meticulous record-keeping and the unforeseen power of overlooked systems. The balance between attacker and defender had shifted, and the invisible threads of digital surveillance were tightening. Feel free to share your thoughts below. How do you think the hacker could have missed such a critical piece of the network? The forensic team sifted through lines of code and server logs with relentless precision, their eyes scanning for the faintest glimmer of an anomaly that could unravel the hacker's carefully constructed web of deception. A subtle glitch appeared, an irregular packet routing pattern that didn't align with the usual traffic. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but enough to direct their attention toward a series of IP addresses that had been masked within layers of proxy servers and VPN tunnels. This digital breadcrumb was faint but unmistakable. Cross-referencing the timestamps of these anomalies with internet service provider logs, the analysts began to narrow down the physical origin of the intrusion. Each ping, each connection pulse, each data burst was a piece of the puzzle, gradually converging on a specific geographical area. A sprawling apartment complex nestled within the city's labyrinth of concrete and steel. The building itself was unremarkable, blending into the urban monotony, but inside one of its units, a router hummed quietly, unknowingly marking the digital footprint of the man they sought. The FBI's cyber division coordinated with local authorities, compiling surveillance footage and mapping network topology to confirm their suspicions. They matched the IP address tied to the malicious activity with the router's unique hardware identifier. This wasn't a mere coincidence or a lucky guess. It was the result of meticulous cross-validation between digital and physical realms. The hacker, confident in his layers of obfuscation, had overlooked the mundane yet critical element of physical hardware registration. Inside the apartment, the hacker was immersed in his routine, unaware of the tightening net. He toggled between multiple screens, lines of code cascading like a waterfall of encrypted secrets. Video games flickered in the background, a distraction and a haven, giving him a semblance of normalcy amid the chaos he had orchestrated. His fingers danced across the keyboard, executing scripts, patching vulnerabilities, all while oblivious to the fact that agents were silently tracking his every move through the very signals he emitted. Outside, the agents pieced together patterns from the hacker's online activity: login times, session lengths, even the subtle pauses between keystrokes that hinted at sleep or absence. Each data point was a thread in the tapestry they wove, revealing habits and routines as clearly as a watchful observer noting the comings and goings of a suspect. It was not brute force that would bring him down, but patience and the quiet accumulation of evidence. The apartment complex itself became a focal point for law enforcement. Cameras on the street and in communal areas captured the comings and goings of residents, cataloging faces and vehicles in discrete databases. The hacker's daily life, once so private, was now under a microscope, every errand and every moment outside the digital sphere recorded and analyzed. The agents studied his patterns: when he left, when he returned, the times he was most active online. This was a game of shadows and light, of tracing the invisible with tools grounded in reality. One evening, as the hacker leaned back in his chair, the glow of the screens reflecting off his glasses, he felt invincible. There was an unspoken arrogance in his confidence, a belief that the complex algorithms and proxy chains he deployed rendered him untouchable. He had dismantled firewalls, masked his signature, and erased logs, or so he thought. In his mind, the authorities were chasing ghosts, chasing shadows that slipped through their fingers. But in the quiet war rooms of the FBI, monitors displayed real-time maps of data flow, IP trails weaving through the digital landscape like a spider's web. Analysts tracked the hacker's digital heartbeat, a pattern as unique as a fingerprint. With each keystroke he made, each game he played, each script he ran, he was feeding the system that was methodically closing in. It was a juxtaposition of two worlds, one filled with flashing code and virtual exploits, the other grounded in tangible evidence and relentless observation. The hacker's illusion of control was the final flaw in his armor. The agents knew that all it took was one misstep, one overlooked clue, to unravel the entire facade. The digital maze he navigated was intricate, but not impenetrable. As the night deepened outside the apartment windows, the FBI's operation pressed forward, the hunt moving from lines of code to the realm of human behavior and geography. The chase was no longer simply a battle of algorithms, but a meticulous game of cat and mouse, where every detail mattered and every moment brought the net closer to closure. The shattering force of the door echoed through the cramped apartment, a violent rupture that ripped apart the fragile calm of the early morning. He was jolted awake, heart pounding, eyes wide and disoriented as the heavy boots thundered up the stairs. The agents flooded inside, their voices harsh and unyielding, slicing through the fog of confusion. Commands barked in rapid-fire succession, drowning out any attempt at coherent thought. Hands seized his laptop, the device that had been both his shield and his weapon, now a cold, unyielding piece of evidence slipping from his grasp. The metal of the handcuffs bit into his wrists as they snapped shut, and the reality of the moment pressed down with suffocating weight. His mind raced, scrambling for some fragment of control or understanding amid the chaos. Desperation clawed at him, and his voice broke the tense silence, repeating the same futile mantra. "That's impossible. I erased everything." But the truth was merciless. Every file, every trace, every byte he thought he had destroyed had vanished into the digital void, wiped clean as meticulously as possible. Except for one. A single file, hidden in plain sight, overlooked in his frantic attempts to cover his tracks. That file was a silent witness, a ghost trapped in the labyrinth of his own making, waiting to be uncovered. As the agents rifled through the remnants of his digital life, their eyes sharp and relentless, the atmosphere thickened with unspoken implications. The apartment, once a sanctuary of solitude and secrecy, now felt like a cage closing in. The flickering glow of the seized laptops illuminated the faces of men trained to unravel puzzles of human behavior, to decode the faintest signs of deception and fear. Every glance, every movement was scrutinized, transformed into a potential clue in a larger, inscrutable narrative. The weight of the moment settled heavily on him. His mind, usually so adept at navigating complex algorithms and encrypted pathways, faltered under the pressure. The relentless tide of law enforcement was not something that could be outmaneuvered by digital cunning alone. This was a confrontation with stark reality, with the tangible consequences of choices made in isolation. Outside, the city's restless pulse beat on indifferent and unchanging, a backdrop to the unraveling drama inside. The investigation, once confined to lines of code and shadowy networks, had breached the threshold of physical space, dragging secrets into the harsh light of day. The tension in the room was palpable, a fragile boundary between order and chaos held together by the thin threads of control that were rapidly fraying. As the FBI began cataloging and securing evidence, their methodical approach hinted at a deeper strategy, one that extended beyond this singular raid. The file that had escaped deletion was more than a mere digital artifact. It was a key, a cipher that could unlock connections and narratives far beyond the apartment's walls. It carried the potential to expose hidden layers of the case, to reveal the unseen structures underpinning the mystery. In the midst of this, the man's internal landscape shifted from disbelief to a creeping dread. The realization that his efforts to erase the past had been incomplete gnawed at him, a silent admission of vulnerability. The digital maze he had mastered was suddenly a prison of his own making, each step forward shadowed by the knowledge that one misstep could unravel everything. The agents moved with precision, their presence a constant reminder of the stakes involved. Every seized device, every scrutinized document, was a fragment of a larger puzzle. The investigation was no longer just about what had been done, but about who was involved, what had been hidden, and what could be uncovered. The boundaries between truth and deception blurred in the charged air, where every detail held the potential to shift the balance. His thoughts flickered to the file, the one anomaly that defied his control. It was a silent testament to oversight, a crack in the facade he had so carefully constructed. That file was the thread the investigators would pull, the beginning of a cascade of revelations that neither he nor the agents could fully anticipate. It was the hinge on which the entire case might turn. Outside the apartment, the city continued its indifferent rhythm, oblivious to the turning tide within. Inside, the unfolding confrontation between man and machine, between secrecy and exposure, was far from over. The intricate dance of investigation, the slow unraveling of layers hidden beneath the surface, was only just beginning to reveal its deeper patterns. If you've stayed with me until now, it means this story has grabbed your attention as much as it did mine. It's been quite the ride, peeling back those layers and feeling the tension rise between what's hidden and what's about to come to light. Moments like these remind us how much there is beneath the surface, just waiting for someone curious enough to uncover it. If you found value in this piece, whether it's the subtle clues, the unfolding mystery, or just the way these threads come together, consider subscribing. It's a quiet way to keep this kind of content coming your way. Something thoughtful, a little suspenseful, and always worth your time. No pressure, just an invitation to stay connected with stories that make you think a little deeper. And hey, if you've been here through the whole thing, drop a comment with, "I'm with you till the end." It's a simple phrase, but it tells me you're part of this journey. And it's always great to know who's right there through the twists and turns. Conversations start with something small like that, and who knows where it might lead. If this story resonated with you, a quick feels like a nod between us. A way to say, yeah, this made me pause and reflect. It's less about numbers and more about sharing a moment. A connection formed over the quiet unraveling of a mystery that's still far from finished. Before you go, there's a video just over here that ties in perfectly with what we just explored. It digs into another piece of the puzzle, and I think you'll find it adds a new layer to the whole picture. So go ahead, click over and keep this thread alive a little longer. I'll see you there.